All right, welcome to On the Record. I'm Pat Welter, joined by Chris Lee and Brian Murphy. That was Coaching Carolina the Belichick Way, the full documentary available right now over on the WRAL YouTube page. And tonight, we're unpacking some of the stuff that hit the cutting room floor and how year two of the Bill Belichick era is already unfolding. So we're going to talk about the locker room, the coaches, the UNC Board of Trustees, and plenty more. But we should start with what's been happening the last couple weeks since the documentary aired. UNC has a new offensive coordinator and a lot of players shuffling in and out through this little thing we like to call the transfer portal. So let's bring in Chris and Brian. And guys, I think we should start with the offensive coordinator, Bobby Petrino, who's probably best known for A, maybe a motorcycle accident, and B, running good offense. Brian, I'll start with you. Do you think this is a good fit for the Tar Heels? It's certainly a personality fit on the coaching staff. Sure. Bill Belichick, Steve Belichick, and now Bobby Petrino, maybe the most aloof trio we're going to see in all of college football. But hey, the guy knows offense and he knows quarterbacks. And UNC been busy so far in the transfer portal. Gio Lopez is out, Billy Edwards Jr. and Miles O'Neill in. Now, I don't know if this was what people were expecting, because I think we thought Gio Lopez was coming back. I know my sources were telling that. Probably your guys were as well. That was the consensus. Petrino comes in, and we get a quarterback in Miles O'Neill from Texas A&M, who was one that Petrino recruited, and now Billy Edwards Jr. from Wisconsin. Did that feel underwhelming to you, Chris, or do you see something there?
Yeah, you know, it's good that maybe this particular quarterback is coming.
And I think what happened after year one is that GM Michael Lombardi loses a little bit of that benefit of the doubt. They struck out on their first quarterback. Now this is quarterback 2 and 3, not to mention Bryce Baker left, Brian.
Yeah, well, you got to think about what quarterbacks cost, right? The top.
And they have a freshman class that was reportedly valued at $10 million. Now, I know you talked to a source, Brian, that said that number was inaccurate, but that speaks maybe a little bit to the financial, budgetary things that are happening here at UNC. Tyler Thompson is a player I look at. Here's a guy that's a true success story this season as a redshirt sophomore, comes in 7 sacks. And from what I'm told, he was essentially lowballed in the negotiation process. He walks out the door. How is it not cheaper to retain a guy like that than try to bring another pass player in? What was your read, Brian?
Yeah, well, they had a lot of defensive players they wanted to pay, obviously.
If I perform, I can get paid.
Yeah, player evaluation, a big issue for UNC in year one under Michael Lombardi. So was the culture issues at UNC, and a big piece of the documentary focused on reporting about what went wrong in the locker room this past season. Let's roll a quick clip from the doc. According to multiple sources, well, to UNC's credit, specifically the players' credit, they did come together to finish the season relatively strong. Maybe you take away the NC State loss, but they did finish relatively strong to how they started. But then this season, Brian, basically a whole new batch of 70 new players when you count that 40-player freshman class and about 30 players that are coming through the transfer portal. Can Belichick learn from his mistakes as far as how to assemble this team to have a unified culture?
Well, you're going to have to. I mean, that's the biggest thing. I don't think UNC can go through another season like they went through last year.
Yeah, UNC, one of the worst teams in the ACC, one of the worst teams, at least offensively, in all of college football last season. One thing that should help with that divided locker room is Jordan Shipp. He's returning. He was a key leader for the Tar Heels last season. So we are just getting started with our conversation about the future of UNC football in the Bill Belichick era. After the break, we are bringing in WRAL documentary investigator Kristen Severance. We discuss nepotism within the program and what happened to the Board of Trustees after the big push to sign Belichick. Next. Welcome back. WRAL documentary investigator Kristen Severance joining us now. And it's no secret that a handful of people on the UNC football staff share the last name, right? Nepotism was something we explored in the documentary, so let's play a quick clip.
Tonight we are talking about Belichick.
Belichick's circle just gets tighter and tighter and tighter. Now is almost exclusively family here at UNC. And Kristen, we're used to this kind of practice covering college sports. You know, you see this in the NFL as well, but as more of an outsider coming into this world, what struck you about this and the nepotism within UNC?
Just how common it is. I mean, you heard Stuart Man.
And that's the downside, right? After a season like they had, where they go 4-8 with the numbers they have, changes have to be made. And it's notable that Freddie Kitchens let go, Mike Prefer, special teams coordinator, let go. None of the sons were let go, either Lombardi or Belichick. So is it fair to claim nepotism here, Brian, or was the firings they made warranted?
Well, I think, you look at the defense, and the defense was pretty good. So you can make a case that the Belichicks actually did a pretty good job on the.
Yeah, look, when you're handing down from a GM who's handing down to his quarterback coach, who was his son, now to an offensive coordinator who has experience with that quarterback's coach, it's synergy, but there's not the diversity of thought that you speak out that can lead to some out-of-the-box thinking that we didn't necessarily see here at UNC. Well, as interesting as all that was, maybe the most interesting thing of this whole thing was the hiring process. UNC jumping through hoops to get Belichick to Chapel Hill. At one point, the president and Marco Rubio were involved here, and it ends up with some stripping of powers from the board of trustees. Here's that clip from the doc. Now, typically in college sports, you think of the hiring being done by the athletic director. But from everything we understand, this was a hiring process led by Pryor there that you saw in the doc. And he agreed to do this interview, which is something that he did not have to do. And you edit this down, so we only see what's edited there. There's that one key moment where he kind of gets in the gotcha. What stood out about that moment and just some of the things maybe you didn't even get to use in the doc?
I mean, so Brian and I did this interview together. It was over an hour. He did not have to do it, as you said. I mean, there are many.
I wonder what would have happened if Bubba Cunningham was able to lead this search. If we got a Todd Monken, a Tommy Rees, or a John Summerall. Chris, do you think we'd be any better off today?
Maybe so, but that's one of those situations. I thought this was the most interesting part of the doc, was seeing that, because also I'm wondering how much did that have to do with the Louisiana state government getting involved with LSU's hiring process?
That they wanted.
And we're going to see if all that attention follows them into Bill Belichick, the sequel. Well, thanks so much, Kristen, for joining us here in the conversation. After the break, we're going to wrap things up with a little look into the crystal ball. We'll walk through the 3 things we're keeping an eye on in year 2 of the Belichick era. All right, welcome back to On the Record. We've done a lot about Bill Belichick season 1. Let's talk about season 2. Chris, what are you most looking forward to seeing here, whether it's positive or negative in year 2 under Belichick?
I mean, honestly, it just comes down to the last year's roster.
And for me, it comes down to the quarterback. Bringing Gio Lopez back to me was not an option. When it seemed like that's what they were going to do, I was very concerned, as I'm sure many Tar Heels fans were out there. Now, the guys that they brought in were not necessarily to the level that I was expecting if you're going to bring in a new quarterback. Billy Edwards Jr. was number 2 in the Big Ten passing at Maryland a couple years ago, but only threw 15 touchdowns in that season. Didn't play last season due to an injury at Wisconsin. Miles O'Neill, he's a freshman. Who knows? Was a former 4-star recruit, has some experience with the offensive coordinator, and is, of course, a Massachusetts guy. So, Bill Belichick likes that. And maybe Travis Burgess is the guy. He's coming from in Atlanta, also had an injury. But when you're bringing in this guy like Miles O'Neill, you wonder how much are they invested in Travis Burgess going forward, or is it just competition? Final quick thoughts, Brian.
Yeah, this season.
In my opinion, if they don't have on-field success this season, we could be talking about a new coach this time next year, but we'll get to that when we cross it. That's all the time we have for you. Thank you all for tuning into this episode of On the Record. If you have something to say about tonight's discussion, email us your comments, questions, or criticisms on the record at WRAL.com. Have a good night.